Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about verse 11 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. Bhagavan composed this verse in a certain context, and the context in which he composed it is regarding the two birthday verses that he wrote many years earlier. That is, he probably composed this verse around about 1930 or so, but the two birthday verses he composed in 1912 when his devotees first celebrated his Jayanti or birthday. So to give the background context, I will first read the meaning of the two birthday verses. What he wrote in the first of the two birthday verses is piṟandāṉ edo, whatever his birthday. Peru vira save, he addresses the devotees, you who make a great celebration. Piṛandadu evaṉ nam eṇḍṟu pēṇi, piṛandu irital indru eṇḍrum ondrai ilahu porulil piṛanda andre piṛandāṉ am. That means only that day when, carefully investigating where we were born, we are born in the substance, in porul. Porul means the real substance or vastu, which always shines as one without being born and dying. That day, only that day is the birthday, is the real birthday. So Bhagavan in this verse, he's correcting our idea that the birth of the body is our real birthday. Our real birthday is only that day when we are born in the real substance. The substance he refers to here, porul, that refers to our own real nature, what we actually are, the pure awareness I am. So the implication is only when we investigate ourselves and thereby know ourselves as we actually are, and knowing ourselves as we actually are means being as we actually are, only that is the real birthday. The birth of this body is not at all the real birthday. And he says about that, that real substance, porul, it always shines as one without being born and dying. When he says it shines as one, he implies it shines as the only one. It is the one and only reality. And it is one without a second. For it, there's no other thing. Because it alone is what is real, it's never born, it never comes into existence, and it never dies, it never ceases to exist. So that alone is what is real, and therefore being born in that, or being born as that, is the real birthday, is what he's saying here. In other words, when we investigate ourselves, we thereby merge back into the source from which we have risen. Ego is thereby destroyed, and we remain as we always actually are, that eternal, ever unborn and ever undying reality or real substance. And then in the second verse, he sang, piṛandāṉ enam piṛapukku aradu, sorry. Piṛandāṉ utsavamai pēṇal irinda pinatiku alankaricum peppu endre tanne unandu odungal tane unavu. That means endre literally means saying, but it implies here understanding. Understanding, quotation, not weeping for birth, even on birthday, or instead of weeping for one's birth, even on the birthday, cherishing the birthday as a festival is infatuation. It's a comparison, but he doesn't give it he doesn't say like, he says it is the infatuation of adorning a dead corpse. That is, when a person has died, we don't decorate their corpse and celebrate a birthday. Being born in this body, in effect, we are dying to our real nature. So celebrating our birthday is like decorating and celebrating, adorning and decorating a corpse. So understanding that, only subsiding by being aware of well, he doesn't say by being aware, only subsiding, being aware of oneself is awareness. In other words, when we know what we actually are, when we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, we will thereby subside. That is, we will cease rising as ego, and that state of not rising as ego is the real awareness. That is the that is the real awareness. That is being aware of ourselves as I am this body, and consequently being aware of so many other things. That is a mere dream. It is not the real awareness. The real awareness is that state in which we're aware of nothing other than ourselves, having subsided back into the source from which we rose. So these are the two verses that Bhagavan composed in 1912. Many years later, while discussing the meaning and implication of these two verses with Lakshman Sharma, Bhagavan explained what he meant in the first verse, the first of those two verses, when he said, piṟandadu, piṛandu irital indru endrum ondrai ilahu porolil piṛandadu. That is, being born in porol, one real substance, which always shines as one without being born and dying. What he meant by that, he explained this to Lakshman Sharma. And Lakshman Sharma wrote a Sanskrit verse in which he summarized Bhagavan's explanation. And when he composed that Sanskrit verse, he showed it to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan at once expressed the same idea in a Tamil verse, namely this verse that is now verse 11 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. What he says in this verse, he begins by asking a question, as he did in the first of those two birthday verses. But in the first of those two birthday verses, the question he asked was, saying, no, just go back to it. He asked, piṛandāṇ, whatever his birthday. But in this verse, what he begins with the question, piṛandadu evaṉ. That means who was born. In other words, who was really born is what he's saying. And he answers it, tān biramma mūlattē piṛandadu evaṉ ṇāṉeṉṭṛu pēṇi piṛandāṉ avaṉē piṛandāṉ. That means carefully investigating where I was born, one who was born in one source, Brahman, he alone is one who was born. So the one who only being born in our source, in Brahman, in what he referred to in that first of the two birthday verses as porol, in other words, what we actually are, being born in and as what we actually are, that only one who is born thus is one who is truly born, is the implication. Nitam, he is eternal. muṇīśaṉ, the Lord of sages. Bhagavan puts it very nicely. ṇavaṉavaṉ avaṉ dinamum nāḍu. That means um, uh, uh, ணவனவன avaṉ dinamum means he is daily new. It literally means new. That means he's ever new and ever fresh. Ṇāḍu means investigate. So what Bhagavan is saying here, but the only one who is born in one source, namely Brahman, by carefully investigating where was I born, is one who was really born. He is eternal. Eternal here, when he says nitam doesn't mean that we become eternal when we attain liberation. Nitam means eternal. It means beyond time. That is, what is truly eternal is that which existed before time, during time, and after time. That is that which transcends all limitations of time. That is truly being eternal. So Bhagavan often emphasized this, that liberation is eternal. That doesn't mean that once we attain liberation, we will ever be liberated. It doesn't just mean that. It means that even now we are liberated. Only because we have risen as ego, we seem to be in bondage, but this bondage is unreal. When we know ourselves as we actually are, we will know that we are eternally liberated. So he is eternal. He is muṇīśaṉ, the Lord of all munis, all sages. He is daily new. That is Brahman, or our source. What we actually are is something that is not, but doesn't age with time. It's beyond time, so there's no question of it aging. It's ageless and ever fresh awareness. It's the ageless and ever fresh awareness I am. So it's beyond all time and therefore beyond all decay. So it's new. It's new in the sense that it's ever fresh. And we can know that by investigating. That's why he ends with the word ṇāḍu. ṇāḍu means investigate. What do we have to investigate? As he says, carefully investigating where was I born. That is the word he uses for carefully investigate is pēṇi. Pēṇi means pēṇi is an adverbial participle of the verb pēṇu, which it means cherishing, caring for, or knowing. And in this context, therefore, it implies carefully, tenderly, lovingly investigating or attending to. So carefully investigating where I was born. When he says investigating where I was born, that is in Tamil he says piṟandadu evaṉ, piṛandadu evaṉ, where I was born, means where were we born? We were born, the place we were born is the source from which we have risen. In other words, Brahman. So by investigating our source means what we actually are, because what rises is ego. From where does ego rise? Only from that which exists prior to ego. What exists prior to ego is what exists eternally, namely our own pure being, I am. So ego is the false awareness, I am this body. It rises or is born from the fundamental awareness, I am, which is our very being, our existence. And it is I am is Satchit. It is pure being and pure awareness. That is the source from which we've risen. So when he says carefully investigating where I was born, it means carefully investigating our own fundamental awareness, I am, which is the source from which we have risen as ego, this false awareness, I am this body. in all these verses, Bhagavan is emphasizing the need for us to investigate what we actually are, or to investigate the source from which we've risen, which amounts to the same, because the source from which we have risen is itself what we actually are, namely Sat-Chit, the pure existence awareness I am. So only by investigating that will we subside. And when we will subside means subside completely, dissolve back into our source. When we dissolve back into our source, we remain as we always actually are. So that dissolving back into our source and being as we always actually are is what he refers to as being born in our source, Brahman. So I think that's the gist, that's the main message of this verse. Again, that is, as in, Bhagavan takes every opportunity to emphasize the need for us to investigate ourselves, or to investigate the source from which we have risen. Because only by investigating the source from which we have risen will we as ego subside in such a way that we never rise again. In other words, will we dissolve and cease to, dissolve completely and forever in our source, the pure awareness I am. So does anyone have any questions about this verse or either of the two verses that he wrote earlier, in the context of which he wrote this verse?
Thank you, Michael. I don't know if you're able to see this. Robert Boyer posted a message. Robert, Robert Boyer, do you want to read your message? Okay. I'm not able to hear Robert. I can't see him either. I don't know what happened to his computer. So I will let Robert Delgesh read it for him. Go ahead, Robert Delgesh.
You want to read Robert Boyer's statement?
Yeah, Robert Boyer's comment. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In my view, one key point of Advaita Vedanta is the theorem or axiom for all x and y, that is, x equals y. That settles some arguments. However, there may be those that deny even the first order of logic theorem for some x equals x, or x does not equal x. That's where, I think that's where the statement ends. Descartes might have said, I think, therefore, there is something rather than nothing. Heidegger and Plato would probably agree that the fundamental question of metaphysics is, why is there something rather than nothing? The answer must be in the mind of the questioner. But I make cheap talk, not being one of those, I just lost the place, not being little help from it. Oh, we get very little help from Aristotle. Aristotle's unmoved mover, who only thinks of himself. Anyway, I don't see a question there, but that's the statement that you wanted me to read.
Okay. It's a bit difficult for me to follow that. Does that question appear in the chat? Because I don't see it in the chat.
Well, he posted at 9:05 a.m., but unfortunately, I'm not able to copy it and repost it,
Yeah.
So I think that before you joined, usually.
Okay, yeah. So
Michael, I think it's a question of self-referencing. X equals X, X equals Y. Advaita says X equals Y, X equals, we're all one.
Advaita ultimately doesn't even say X equals Y, because X and Y are two things. The basic principle of Advaita is ekam eva advaitiyam, one only without a second. So there is no second thing. But in the view of ourself as ego, there seem to be many things other than the one thing. So there's one without a second seems to be not the case from the perspective of ego. So since the ultimate truth is that what exists is one only without a second. The view of ourself as ego is a distorted view, an illusory view. We are seeing the one as many. So it is then necessary to say the many are actually just the one. But that is not the ultimate truth of Advaita. The ultimate truth of Advaita is there is only ever one. There never is any many. But it's only because from the perspective of ego, we see the one as many. We have to be told the many is one. So in that sense, that is the ultimate truth is of Advaita is X equals X. There's nothing other than X. But because we see otherness, multiplicity, which we can call Y, it has to be said, but that Y is nothing other than X, the one thing that actually exists. That's part of it. Regarding why there is something, not nothing, that is a question people love to ask that question. But actually, if we consider it carefully, that is a question for which there can never be any answer. Because why is there something not nothing? We are asking why there is something. Why is looking for a reason or a cause. But that reason or cause must exist. So it's to ask why something exists rather than nothing exists is a question that cannot be answered. It is. We all know it is a fact. Existence is a fact. What exists is more useful than asking why there is something rather than nothing. The more useful question, the question Bhagavan asks us to consider is not why there is something, but what is that something that actually exists? What actually exists? Now we see all this multiplicity, but all this multiplicity is constantly, it appears in waking and dream, it disappears in sleep. Whatever appears and disappears is impermanent. Therefore, it's not real. What is real must always exist and must always shine. What exists and shines eternally is only our own being, I am. So the ultimate brute fact, brute fact is a term they use in philosophy to mean something that is too basic to be explained. There's no explanation. It's the ultimate fact. The one ultimate fact is I am. I exist. Why is that the one ultimate fact? Because we can reasonably doubt the existence of all other things. Other things seem to exist, but just because they seem to exist doesn't mean they actually exist. But we must actually exist because we are aware. In order to be aware, we must exist. So whether what we are aware of is real or illusory, as awareness, we are real. That is, we must exist as awareness. But the real awareness is one without a second. So the real awareness is not an awareness of anything. It is just pure awareness. The awareness that is aware of nothing other than its own being, I am. That is real awareness. Awareness of manyness is just a dream, an illusion, a fiction. It's not real, because the many things we are aware of do not actually exist. So it seems to us we exist as a body and a world exists out there. But all these things do not actually exist. They merely seem to exist. But to us, it seems that they actually exist. So being aware of what doesn't actually exist, as if it actually exists, is not real awareness. So the one real awareness is the awareness I am. Regarding Descartes, some philosophers say that Descartes overstepped the mark when he said, I think, therefore I am. They say all he can legitimately say is, I think, therefore there is thinking. That is, they assume they can be thinking without an I. But who is the thinker of all thoughts? It's something that is aware of itself as I. So awareness is always aware of itself as I. That is, the I is the pronoun, the self-referential pronoun, the pronoun but refers to that which, well, it's the pronoun that refers to ourself, who are what is aware. So I is the natural name of awareness. There cannot be thinking without awareness. That is, the thinking is just thoughts appearing in something that is aware, or in the view of something that is aware. So without I, there couldn't be thinking. But Bhagavan also commented, well, Bhagavan's comment on Descartes' saying, I think, therefore I am, was recorded by Lakshman Sharma. What Bhagavan once said to Lakshman Sharma about that is, it is like if there's a parade going through the town, some festival, and the king goes by on an elephant. But you refuse to believe that the king has, though you see the king going by on an elephant, you refuse to believe that the king goes by on an elephant until you see the footprints of the elephant on the road. That is, we don't need to think in order to know we are. That is, the awareness I am is fundamental. Thinking is something second to that. So we don't need thinking to know that we are. In sleep, we are not thinking, but we still know that we are. So it is, according to Bhagavan, it's like it's like convincing oneself that the elephant has gone past because you can see its footprints. But you don't need to see that because you've just seen the elephant going past. Like that, the one thing that is obvious, the one thing that is self-evident, swayam prakasa, self-shining, is this awareness I am. We don't need thinking or anything else to know that we are. We know that is, knowing that we are is our very nature. So it's unnecessary to say, I think, therefore I am, therefore I am. That is, we're clearly aware I am. That awareness I am is itself, is our very nature, our very existence, our very being. So we don't need thinking to know that we are. But because for the mind of those who are outward going, they overlook the fact that though we cease to be aware of anything else in sleep, the one thing we continue to be aware of in sleep is our own existence. Of course, our own existence is not an object of awareness. Just by being, we know our being. As Bhagavan says, being oneself is knowing oneself in verse 26 of Upadeshundya. So merely because what we actually are is awareness, to know ourselves, all we need to do is to be ourselves. So there is never a moment when we do not know ourselves. In sleep, we know ourselves and we know nothing else whatsoever. In waking and dream, we know ourselves, but instead of knowing ourselves as just as ourselves, instead of knowing ourselves as just I am, we know ourselves as I am this body. That is, I am is our existence. On top of this existence, we have superimposed an identity. That is, we identify our existence with the existence of this body. So we have this false identity, I am this body. And once we have this false identity, I am this body, we are consequently aware of so many other things. So awareness of all of the body and all other things is superimposed upon the basic awareness I am. So thinking is a superimposition upon the fundamental awareness I am. So we don't need thinking to know that we are. But if our mind is always going outwards, as is the nature of the mind, we overlook the obvious fact that we do not cease to be aware in sleep. And so we think we know our existence because I think, but that is, even when we don't think, we still know our existence. So if Descartes was a great philosopher, a great scientist, but he had an outward-looking mind. So he overlooked the fact that we know our existence even in the absence of thinking. And not only he overlooks this fact, but vast majority of philosophers overlook this fact. It is only in Advaita philosophy, but the fact of our awareness in sleep is so much emphasized. In all other philosophies, as far as I'm aware, they overlook this basic fact. But awareness is not dependent upon thinking. Awareness continues whether there is thinking or whether there is no thinking.
Robert, this sleep analogy somehow I never understood, because probably I'm using mind to understand. So when I'm sleeping, I get the dreams, or I don't have the dreams, but I I don't know how to understand that analogy well.
Okay, it's not an analogy; it's a fact. But I will try and
it's a fact.
explain
I'm
it.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's how many states are you aware of existing in? You're aware of waking. Now you're awake. You're aware there's another state called dream. But are you not clearly aware that there's a third state in which you're not aware of anything?
yeah.
Are you not aware of having been in a state in which you were not aware of anything?
Yeah, yes.
That state in which we are not aware of anything is called sleep. But the fact that we are aware of having been in that state means we were aware of being in that state. When we were asleep, we were aware, we weren't aware I am asleep. We were aware I am. Though we were not aware of anything else, we never ceased to be aware of our own existence.
Yeah. And one more thing, Robert, is
if we think about it carefully, we can understand this by reasoning. But if we want to understand this to be more firmly convinced, but we do not cease to be aware in sleep, the way we can gain that conviction is by the practice of self-investigation. That is, in waking and dream, the more we attend to ourself, that is, to our own fundamental awareness, I am, the more clear it will be to us that this awareness, I am, is the fundamental reality, and that it continues and shines throughout all the three states. So that clarity will come to the extent to which we go deep in this practice of self-investigation.
okay.
You were about to ask something else?
No, I think so. Now what we are trying to understand, Robert, is we are trying to use the mind, the very thing we want to destroy, to understand this whole thing, right? So there is no paradox there?
No, but that is, we need to understand these things in order, that is, we need to understand these things in order to understand what is the practice. And we cannot do the practice without understanding what it is. So understanding is necessary, but the practice will take us beyond understanding.
Okay. I mean, just to be sure, we are using the mind to understand this, the very thing we are trying to destroy.
But we need to understand more about what is the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is the awareness that is going outwards. Bhagavan said that same awareness that is called mind or ego when going outwards, when that awareness is turned back on itself, turned back within, it ceases to be mind or ego and becomes the pure awareness that it always actually is.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Devaṛajā Mudliya has recorded it very nicely in two places in Day by Day, where Bhagavan says, I can't remember the exact words, and how Devaṛajā Mudliya recorded it won't be the exact words of Bhagavan, but the idea is very clear. But when the awareness that is turned outwards is called mind or ego. When that same awareness is turned inwards, that is what we actually are. That is the pure awareness I am.
And what we go along what mind is doing, and then we catch that it is the mind, and then we turn it inward. that whole process is also done by mind itself, catching mind that it has gone outward and then pulling it inward?
Yes. That is, what is aware of anything outward is mind. So only the mind can notice that it has gone outwards. But when we turn that mind that has gone outwards back within, to the extent to which we turn within, to that extent mind subsides, and the pure awareness, which is the adhisthana, the adhara, the foundation of the mind, that alone remains shining.
Got you. Thank you, Robert.
I think Ram meant to say Michael. There are a lot of Roberts around. So.
Identity doesn't matter. We come
right.
here to go beyond
I
identity.
meant to say Michael. I apologize.
So call me anything you like. It makes no difference.
And just now I saw your note. So Kumar, sorry for jumping in. I apologize.
No problem. So Michael, so I have a question regarding our verse. Some may ask, because Bhagavan said this, do we even need to celebrate his birthday? What would be your answer?
Bhagavan took every opportunity to push us within, to make us investigate ourselves, to prompt us to investigate ourselves. So when devotees wanted to celebrate his birthday, he took that as an opportunity to turn within, to write these verses in order to turn our mind back within, to stop attending to the superficial outward appearances, like decorating a corpse, as he says, to turn back within and find out, where was I born? So the best way to celebrate Bhagavan's birthday is why was Bhagavan born in this world? Why did he appear in this world? It was to give us these teachings, to tell us to turn back within. So the best way to celebrate Bhagavan's birthday is to turn back within and to subside back into our source. That is what we have to take from these verses. But most of us still lack sufficient love to be able to turn within and to remain permanently subsided in our source. So since we have risen as ego and are looking outwards, it is not in... For us, Bhagavan is God and Guru and everything. So it is natural for us, out of our devotion for Bhagavan, to want to celebrate his birthday. So I don't think Bhagavan is not averse to he's not telling us we shouldn't celebrate his birthday. He's trying to push us deeper. Yes, celebrate my birthday, but this is the proper way to celebrate it. Turn within and merge back into your source.
Thank you, Michael.
But this outward celebration, this is all good for devotees, but we have to go deeper. We shouldn't just be satisfied with all this puja and japa and singing songs and everything. This is all good. It all helps to keep the fire of devotion alive in our heart. But we have to use that fire of devotion to direct it to its real target, its real source, back towards ourselves. So Bhagavan was not against any of the more outward expressions of devotion, puja, japa, dhyana, all these things. Bhagavan is not opposed to that, but he's always trying to push us further, to go further. Because these are all preliminary.
Right.
If we've never been to primary school, we wouldn't have learned A, B, C, D, E. We wouldn't have learned to read. We wouldn't have learned to write. We wouldn't have learned mathematics and everything. And we wouldn't therefore be able to study a PhD level. When we're studying at PhD level, we are using the skills we learned in primary school, but we are not stopping with that. We are not going through A, B, C, D, E, F, G every day. We know 1 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, etc. We're not repeating that every day. Those are basic skills we learn. So the puja, the japa, and dhyana, these are basic things, basic tools but are used in the primary school of devotion. But at the advanced PhD level of devotion, the true devotion, as Bhagavan says in verse 9 of Upadeshundia. Baba balatinal bhavana tita sat baba terutale undi para, parabhakti tattvam undi para. The real nature of supreme devotion is Sat Baba to Irutale. That means being in Sat Baba, being in the state of being. And how can we be in that state of being? Only Baba Balatinal, only by the strength of meditation. What meditation is he referring to? The meditation he talked about in the previous verse, which is Ananya Baba, meditation on nothing other than ourselves. So he said that meditation on nothing other than ourselves is best among all. Rather than meditating on God as something other than ourselves, meditating on him as nothing other than ourselves. In other words, meditating on him as I alone, that is best among all. And by the strength of that, and what he goes on to say in verse 9 is, by the strength of that Ananya Baba, that meditation on him as nothing other than ourselves, in other words, meditation on ourselves alone, being in Sat Baba, in the state of being, which transcends bhavana, which transcends all mental activity, all meditation in the sense of mental activity, that is the supreme devotion. So Bhagavan is always trying to push us to go deeper. So puja, japa, and dhyana, they all have their place, but we shouldn't stop with that. That's all primary school stuff. We having come to Bhagavan, we've now come to the PhD class. So we now need to be investigating ourselves. That is our PhD, our doctoral research, investigating who am I.
Thank you, Michael. This one of our devotees who wishes to be anonymous, he's asking you to define porul, in the Tamil word porul.
Okay. Bhagavan has
Yes.
Bhagavan has defined what porul is in verse 7 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. So I can't do better than than the definition but given by Bhagavan. That is, in this verse, he talks about Uڵḷadu and Arivu. Uڵḷadu means world, Arivu means awareness. But in this context, the awareness he's talking about is the awareness that rises and subsides. In other words, the awareness that knows the world. In other words, ego or mind. So what he means by awareness in this context is ego or mind. So what he says in this world, in this verse is, Uڵḷadu Arivu Ondrai uditu odungum einum, Uڵḷadu Arivu tannal olirum. That means, though the world and awareness arise and subside simultaneously, the world shines by awareness. What he means by this is, the awareness that rises and subsides with the world is ego. And it is only by ego that the world shines. In other words, it's only in the view of ego that the world seems to exist. That is, ego is the adjunct, conflated awareness, I am this body. In this adjunct conflated awareness is the fundamental awareness I am. That fundamental awareness I am is the original light. So ego shines by that light of I am. And it illumines the world. It enables the world, that is, without the ego, the appearance of the world would not be known. So the world, that's what he means by the world shines by awareness. In other words, the world shines by ego. And then he goes on to say, in the next sentence, Uڵḷadu Arivu Tondri Maridaku Idonai Tondri Mariadu Olirum Undram Am Achte Porul. What that means is, only that which shines without appearing or disappearing, as the place for the appearing and disappearing of the world and awareness, awareness again means ego here, is porul. which is pūṇram. Pūṇram is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word pūrna. Pūrna means what is full, what is whole. In other words, that which is infinite, that which is the whole, the infinite whole. So that poral is the infinite whole. Poral, incidentally, is a Tamil word, but it means, in most contexts, it means the same as the Sanskrit word vastu. So it's the ultimate reality, the ultimate substance. The reason this word that means substance is used here is just like, for example, gold ornaments are nothing other than gold. All this multiplicity, the one substance that appears as all this multiplicity is this poral or vastu, which is the infinite whole. And it is, as Bhagavan says here, it shines without appearing and disappearing as the place. The word he used for place here is idan, which means the place or space or expanse or location or the site or the ground for the appearing and disappearing of the world and the awareness that knows the world. So we can understand what he's saying here with the analogy he often used of cinema picture. But the base on which the cinema picture appears is the screen. All phenomena, all the perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, and so on, are all just pictures appearing on the screen. And when we say perceptions, that means the whole world is nothing but pictures appearing on the screen. What is the screen on which all these things appear? It is that poral, that ultimate substance. So that is the base, the ground on which everything appears and disappears. But it itself shines eternally without ever appearing or disappearing. So that is Bhagavan's definition of poral. In other words, poral is what we actually are, our real nature. Satchit, the pure awareness I am, that is poral. Is that an adequate answer to that question, or do you want to ask anything more about that?
No, I think that's pretty good. So as a follow-up, I wanted to ask, for poral, you prefer the English word substance. In the past, people have used reality to translate that. In fact, most of them still do. But you prefer the word substance. Could you clarify that, why you prefer the word substance?
Well, that is one of the meanings of the word poral. For example, in Ekama Panchakam, there's a verse in Ekama Panchakam, verse 4, in which he refers to, he uses the golden ornament analogy. And the verse begins with the word ponnaku, for gold or to gold. And when he made that into a Kalivemba form, he put, I think the words he used, the words he added were vastuvam ponnaku, gold, which is the vastu. So that clearly implies he's using the word vastu in the sense of substance. And I mean, these analogies are used so often in Advaita. Bhagavan tended to use this gold ornament analogy most. A parallel analogy is the pot and the clay, that is used a lot in Advaita. Bhagavan tended not to use, he tended to use the gold ornament analogy more, but they're the same basically. That is, there's, as he says, for example, in verse 13 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, what he says in verse 14 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is ஞானமாம் தானே மெய். Oneself, who is awareness, alone is real. Awareness here means pure awareness, jnana. Ṇāṇavamñānam ajñānamam. Awareness that is manifold is ignorance. That is, knowing manyness is ignorance, is the implication. And then he goes on to say, poyam ajñānamu me, ஞானமாம் tanne ṇavaṉ. That means even ignorance, which is unreal, does not exist except as oneself, who is awareness. And then for that he gives an analogy, anigal tam palavam poi. All the many ornaments are unreal. Poyam ponne ṇavaṉ undo. Do they exist except as gold, which is real? So here, Bhagavan, when he uses this analogy, he says the ornaments are unreal, because the ornaments here means the forms. The forms are unreal, because what is today a bangle may tomorrow be melted and made into a necklace. So the forms are unreal. What is real is the substance. So he says, mayam ponne, the gold which is real. So the substance, in Advaita, substance is real, form is unreal. So I think the most appropriate translation of vastu or porol, in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, is substance. That is the sense in which they're used. Some people say, no, in Sanskrit, dravya means substance. Dravya means substance in a cruder sense. That is, dravya refers to a physical substance, whereas vastu or porol refers to a metaphysical substance. What actually exists is the substance. And incidentally, the English word substance is a nice word, because the etymology of the English word substance, sub means under, stance means standing. What stands under is the substance. So the underlying reality, that is the real meaning of substance. Right. So the substance is real, the forms are unreal.
And also the origin, I think it's Latin, substantia. Is that what the word?
Yes.
That also supports it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, that's what I was just saying. That the origin of the English word substance, it means etymologically from the Latin substantia, what stands underneath.
Yeah.
So the substance of the illusory snake is the rope. The substance of the gold ornaments is gold. The substance of the mud pot is mud. The substance of all appearances is the one thing that actually exists, namely I am. So that alone is what Bhagavan means when he talks about porol or vastu.
So the questioner originally asked the question, now as a follow-up is asking, so this is a fundamental substance that both ego and I can be aware of?
Ego and I are but two eyes. There's only one eye. That is, the pure I am is porol or vastu. That is the ultimate substance. Ego is that same substance mixed and conflated with adjuncts as I am this person, I am this body. So even when we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, we don't cease to be aware of ourselves as I am. So ego couldn't shine without this fundamental awareness, I am. So we are never for a moment unaware of the vastu or the porol. Just like when we see gold ornaments, we may admire, oh, this is such a beautiful necklace, such beautiful craftsmanship. But even when we're seeing the beauty of the form, we never cease to see the substance. If you take away the gold, where is the beauty of the necklace or the tiara or whatever beautiful thing has been fashioned out of it by the goldsmith? The ornaments have no existence at all, independent of the gold, independent of their substance. Just like that, ego has no existence whatsoever, independent of its substance. And nothing else has any existence independent of ego, because everything else appears only in the view of ego. So the ultimate substance is Porol, is the pure awareness I am. That is Satchit. That is the real Porol or Vastu, the real substance. That which stands under all of this and supports everything.
Right. So, thank you, Michael. Robert Boyer, are you back online now?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, so
Can you hear me?
Michael did answer your question, so I will send you the recording later. But for now, let's focus on your follow-up to this answer that Michael just gave. You want to read the comment that you just wrote?
I'm not sure what comment you're
I
referring
suggest
to.
that there is no substance.
Oh, well, let me finish my most recent comment by saying that if we take gold, which is so often referred to as the real thing, if we dig, we get protons and neutrons. If we dig more, we get quarks. Will it ever stop? May I doubt it? We may finally get down to energy, but is energy a thing? There is no substance. It's an illusion.
We can go
like
even
everything...
deeper than that. We can go deeper than that. That is, gold is referred to as a substance just for the purpose of analogy. Obviously, gold isn't real. Though Bhagavan says in that verse, gold which is real, he's talking at the level of the analogy. What is actually real, the actual substance, is only I am. Ego borrows its seeming existence from I am. So the substance of ego is the pure awareness I am. And everything else, all names and forms, all quarks and protons and neutrons and quasars and whatever else, I don't know, all these things, whatever they may be, they are all objects known by ego. So they borrow their seeming existence from the seeming existence of ourself as ego. None of these things have any existence whatsoever independent of ego, in whose view alone they seem to exist. So the substance of all phenomena, of all objects, is ego, the subject. And the substance of ego is the pure awareness I am. So that's why I said, though Porol or Vastu means substance, it doesn't mean substance in a physical sense. It's not talking about a physical substance, though it is in a sense analogous to a physical substance, but it is not a physical substance, it's a metaphysical substance.
Would
the
you,
ultimate reality.
May I ask this simple question?
Yes.
Why don't we teach in primary school, when we're teaching arithmetic, the fundamental truth that 1 is equal to 2?
1 is equal to 2. I would say, if you want a fundamental truth, it's that 2 equals 1. Ultimately, all is 1. All multiplicity is an appearance.
My dear Michael, equal is commutative. So if 1 is 2, then 2 is 1, no doubt.
No, we can say the many is 1. We can't say the 1 is many. There is only 1.
It's an axiom of symmetry that if x equals y, then y equals x.
Okay, but the snake is a rope. Can you say the rope is a snake?
No, but I can say in first order logic with equality, as we have it from Gödel, we have the axiom, if x equals y, then y equals x.
That is fine at the level of logic, of pure logic, but when we apply it, we can say the snake is just a rope, but we cannot say the rope is just a snake. It doesn't, in practice, the pure logic doesn't always work.
If you want to do better than Gödel, please write out what your system is, so we can study it.
I don't pretend, but I'm not a brilliant logician. I simply know the simple fact But snake is a rope. The rope is not a snake.
This is in reference to the snake rope analogy, right?
Yes, yes.
Snake, right. You may want to
So
quickly mention that
that
analogy.
is pure logic is fine for mathematicians and for philosophers and such people. But Bhagavan's philosophy is an extremely practical philosophy. Bhagavan philosophy in and of itself philosophy has to have a practical application. Ultimately, the only thing that is useful is knowing and being what we actually are. So Bhagavan's philosophy is a philosophy that the sole aim of which is to direct us how to know and to be what we actually are. So logic has a part to play, but logic has its limitations like everything else. Logic is a function of the intellect. The intellect is limited. So we cannot know the ultimate truth by logic. Logic can help to point us in the right direction.
If 1 equals 2, you're not going to get very far in arithmetic at any level.
Yes. Ultimately, arithmetic is meaningful in a state of multiplicity. Like languages are meaningful in a state of multiplicity. That's why Bhagavan said the ultimate language is silence, because it's beyond 2, where there's only 1 only without a second. So
do you propose that primary schools should simply be silence?
No, because primary schools have a function, a worldly function. So everything has its place. The primary school has its place, the PhD has its place, the Gödel theorem all has its place. But we can't, Gödel's theorem may be very useful for some applications. It is not useful in this, it's unnecessary in this pure philosophy that Bhagavan has taught us, pure and very simple philosophy, basic philosophy, going back to the root.
I'm sure you are right, and I'm sure I am confused.
I'm sure we're all confused. The very nature, confusion is the very nature of ego, because ego is the false awareness. I am this body. I am is pure awareness. This body is a jada, a non-aware physical form. So the very nature of ego is confusion. So all philosophy, all science, all humans' achievements, all are born in this confusion, I am this body. So if we want to be free of confusion, we need to hold on to that which alone is real, namely I am. And thereby we go beyond philosophy, beyond mathematics, beyond religion.
But in primary school, we'll just sit there and be quiet.
Primary school has its own function. All sorts of students go to primary school. Bhagavan also went to primary school. We also went to primary school. But Bhagavan, where he ended up, where we are ending up, is different. So for primary school has a worldly function. That is, children, when they're born in this world, they need to learn certain things. In many societies, there's no such thing as primary school because it's not necessary. But in our modern day society, primary school is necessary because of the type of skills we need to survive in this world. We need primary school, we need secondary school.
One is equal to 2, but we won't tell you that because it will interfere with your getting a job.
Exactly. That's what it's all about ultimately. That's why Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he was asked, he was not much educated. And he said, what use have I got of this breadwinning education? So most education is only for giving us the basic skills to earn our daily bread.
And millions are trying to cross the Texas-Mexican border.
Yes, because everyone is trying to survive in this world. And some places it's easier to survive than others.
We should just tell those immigrants to be quiet.
No, they have as much right to food, clothing, and shelter and the basic amenities of life as we have.
Those are just
If you
things.
want to tell anyone to keep, if we want to tell anyone to keep quiet, we should keep quiet. That's what Bhagavan is
Agreed.
telling us. Sumayaru, just be.
I'll shut up.
Yeah, right. Well, we should all shut up, but do we have the, in order to shut up, we need all-consuming love to subside and surrender ourselves completely. Then only will we truly shut up. Merely stopping speaking is not true silence. Stopping thinking is not true silence. Not rising as ego alone is real silence. Not ever rising as ego.
Right. Thank you, Michael. I hope that answers Robert's questions. That will move
Well,
on
not
to-
all questions can be answered. The only questions we need to answer are the questions that will yield something, the answer of which will yield something useful. So, Bhagavan's teachings are giving us the answers to the really important questions and showing us how to find the answers to those questions for ourselves.
Kumar, can I please add something?
Yes.
The equality sign Robert is talking about is not applicable here, because when you say X appears to be Y, you cannot say Y appears to be X. So it's not associative. The appears to be is not an equal.
I think all this logic, we don't really need to go down this line.
Yeah, exactly.
We can,
right.
you can spend lifetime studying logic and you still won't know what you actually are. So logic is a useful tool. It's useful, but we should apply it in a way that is useful. Bhagavan has shown us a useful way to, a really valuable way in which we can use logic to understand what we are and what we are not. Having understood what we are and what we are not, we then need to investigate ourselves to actually be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So logic has its own place, its own part to play, but we shouldn't limit ourselves to logic. And we shouldn't take logic too far.
Sastra, logica,
Yeah.
vasana.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Thank you. So let's go on to Michael Fenton's question. Has been waiting for a while. Go ahead, Michael. Michael Fenton.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. My mic sometimes acts up, so that's good. Well, we were getting in, looks like we were touching on the something like the essence, the self, that Bhagavan describes, and nothingness, right? So my household, there's me, who I believe in Bhagavan's teachings 100%, and my wife is Buddhist, right? So the Buddhist calls this, underlying reality emptiness, right? But Bhagavan calls it the self. And I find that when me and my wife are talking about this subject, that if we just agree on that the self, what Bhagavan calls the self, and what the Buddhists call the emptiness, that it's really one and the same. Now, I want to say this, though. This is really important. I find that the ace up my sleeve is when I'm talking to my wife, I said, all these teachings you get from Buddha, do they come directly from Buddha? And she'll admit, no, Buddha didn't actually write any teachings at all. All of Buddha's teachings are at least 400 years, scriptures made of Buddhist teachings are 400 years past when Buddha had passed away, right? So there is no direct teachings from Buddha to the people following Buddhism, right? Where, Michael, we have you, you're the goal. Like you, we're getting direct teachings from Bhagavan, directly translated and directly given to us. Like, this is the highest blessing. Sorry. You see where I'm going here. I am so appreciative of you, Michael. Thank you.
Well, it's Michael. This Michael is incidental, unimportant. That is, Bhagavan happens to have given me the role of translating his works to the best of my ability. But let's not. That is just like the pipe through which the water comes. What is the source of that water which is coming through this pipe? That is what we have to appreciate. So the source of all this is Bhagavan. Whatever I have translated, it's Bhagavan's words that I've translated. So if there's any value in my translation, it's because to some extent at least, they're conveying the meaning that Bhagavan intended to convey through his Tamil words. So we have to see the source, which is Bhagavan. Another thing about this something or nothing, well, about nothing, there is no such thing as nothing. Because if there is such a thing as nothing, then it is something and therefore not nothing. So nothing is actually just a human concept. When we say but the reality is nothing, how we reach that point is that it is not any of the particular things that we take it to be. It's not any particular thing, but it is the only thing. So again, this is we get caught up in words here. Another thing, you said Bhagavan said there is the self. Bhagavan actually never talked about any such thing as the self. The self is a term that is used in English translations, but for which there's no real equivalent in Sanskrit or Tamil. That is, the term Bhagavan used in Tamil when he's referring to ourselves generally is tān, which is simply a pronoun but means oneself. The Sanskrit term Atman is also in most cases used as a pronoun meaning oneself. It's also sometimes used as a noun. And as a noun, it can refer either to what we actually are, namely Satchit, the pure awareness I am, or it can refer to ourself as ego. The ego is also Jivatma. So there's this English term, the self, is actually a misleading term. Firstly, in Sanskrit and Tamil, there are no definite articles, so there's nothing equivalent to thee. Secondly, there are no capital letters. So there's no the self with a capital S. The terms that are used, well, particularly in Tamil, this Tamil term tān, it doesn't mean self with a capital S. It simply means oneself. Bhagavan, in the same sentence, he will use this word tān multiple times. Sometimes it is referring to ourself as we actually are. Sometimes it's referring to ourself as ego. We need to understand from a context which he's referring to. For example, in in verse 20 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, Bhagavan uses the word tān and derivatives of it so many times. He starts by saying, Karnam tanne vittu, leaving oneself who sees. Oneself who sees is ego. Tan kaduvale karnal, karnam manamayam mam kakshyam. Oneself seeing God is seeing only a mental image. Again, oneself here is referring to ourself as ego. Then he goes on to say, and it gets really complicated here in the next sentence, he says, Tanne karnam avaṉ, tan kaduval kandan am. He who sees oneself, himself, or is one who has seen God. But then he qualifies it saying, tan mudale means the source of oneself. Tan mudal poi, oneself, the route going, Tan kadval andri illadal, oneself is God. So what he means by that is only one who sees oneself, the origin of oneself, is one who has seen God, because the origin, oneself, going, oneself is not other than God. So we need to apply our understanding here. When he's referring to oneself or one, what is he referring to? In each case, when he says one who sees oneself, he means, if we see what he means by seeing oneself, means seeing what we actually are. And oneself, what we actually are, is the origin of ourself. In other words, the origin of ego. And only one who sees oneself, the origin of oneself, is one who has seen God. Because the origin oneself, again here, origin oneself is referring to ego. He's turning it around. He's referring to ego. The origin oneself going. So when this ego goes, oneself is not other than God. So only when oneself goes is oneself not other than God. So Bhagavan is writing in a very carefully worded and in a very subtle way, but we have to think about. So if we translate Tan here as the self, we get into a complete confusion. If we simply say oneself and understand that oneself in some cases refers to ego, ourself as ego, and in some cases refers to ourself as we actually are, then this becomes clear. So many times Bhagavan didn't use words to clearly distinguish between ourself as we actually are and ourself as ego. He left it to us to understand. In some cases, the distinction is unnecessary. For example, in the term Atma Vichara, does Atma refer to what we actually are or to ego? We can take it either way, because if we investigate ego, we'll find out what we actually are. If we look carefully at the snake, we'll see the rope, because that's what the snake actually is. Likewise, if we look carefully at ego, we'll see what we actually are. So in the term Atma Vichara, we don't have to define Atma as referring either to ego or to our real nature. It's just ourself. We need to investigate ourselves. When Bhagavan wanted to distinguish between ourself as ego and ourself as we actually are, for ourself as ego, he used terms such as ahande, ego, or ahankara. Ahande usually, it just means ego. Or he often used manam, mind, to refer to ego. Because what the mind essentially is his own ego, as he says in verse 18 of Upadeshundya. When he wanted to refer specifically to what we actually are, the term he used was Atma Swarupa. Swarupa literally means own form, but that's the etymological meaning, but the actual meaning of Swarupa is the nature, real nature, what the thing actually is. So Atma Swarupa means the real nature of oneself, in other words, what we actually are. So sometimes he used words to distinguish ego from what we actually are, but there's no exact term in Tamil or Sanskrit, but we can translate as the self with a capital S. So but a lot of the disputes between the Buddhists and the Advaitins center around whether there is the self or not the self. Both are wrong. That is, there is no, the word self is best to understand not as a noun, but as a pronoun, because there's no separate thing, the self. I am myself. You are yourself. This table is itself. The light is itself. The tree is itself. Your wife is herself. Your children are themselves. So everything is itself. So there's no separate thing as the self. So if as some Buddhists do, if you claim there's no such thing as the self, there's no such thing as self, then you're saying there's nothing at all, because everything is itself. But if you're saying, no, there is something called the self, you're equally wrong, because there's no separate thing called the self. So the Sanskrit term Atman and the Tamil word Tan simply refers to ourself. Depending on the context, it can refer to ourself as we actually are, or it can refer to ourselves as we now seem to be, namely as ego. But it's not a separate thing called the self. So this term, the self, is actually a misleading term, because as soon as we start thinking in terms of the self, then we are reifying something that has no separate existence. But there's no, I and myself are not two separate things. I am myself. You are yourself.
Well,
So you don't have any self other than yourself.
Yeah, I hear everything you're saying, but I actually feel that there is a teaching in itself by him using it in the two different ways, because the ultimate truth is you are already that.
Exactly. Even ego is nothing but the pure awareness that we actually are.
Yeah, you are already that. Like realization isn't something that happens.
Yeah. That's why Bhagavan often said, there are not two eyes, one eye to find the other eye. There are not two eyes, there are not two selves, there's only one self.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
As he says in verse 33, I think, of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, being one is the experience, is the truth, the experience of everyone.
But on a little bit of give to the Buddhist is, although they call it emptiness, when you ask them what is emptiness, they're like, emptiness is everything. It's emptiness is entirely full. So it's not.
It's ultimately, it's all down to words.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And we need to go, the words are useful in this path, they're useful as a pointer, but we can't find the truth in the words. The words are like the finger pointing at the moon. We need to see what the finger is pointing at, not at the finger. So long as we don't see beyond the words, we are not seeing what the words are pointing at. The words are pointing at something beyond themselves. That is what we need to understand. And what Bhagavan's words are all pointing at is ourself.
Yes.
For one self that there actually is, for one and only self.
One of the best analogies that Bhagavan gave, it was covered just a few weeks ago, was that using a lamp to look for the darkness. Like
exactly.
And then he would pick up a lamp, would be the first thing to do, to go looking for this darkness. And that's where we're all at. Like that's what we're trying to do. Any sort of thought, anything in the mind, any action or whatever will prevent you from seeing it. You need to just drop everything, strip everything away. I agree on that. Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Thank you both. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you, Michael and Kumar. So in my practice, what I'm seeing is that there is, so I just want to describe something that's going on and see where we go with it. So I just be paying attention, and there will be something that I recognize as sort of that feels like inspiration, just pure, comes out of nowhere. It's just inspiration. And then I will watch the mind just glob onto it and, take it. Oh, there's ideas, there's emotions, there's to-dos, there's all those things. And so as I'm and then I realize that I'm the one watching all of this process happen. And the question that's been in my mind is, what is the nature of that inspiration in its purest form before all of I'm pretty clear that all this other stuff is just ego. But what I'm not clear on is, what is the inspiration? Is that where to hold the attention, or is that where to drop into the being, or is that still just another artifact of the mind, since I'm clearly witnessing it? You know what I mean?
Okay. Good question. Anything that appears and disappears is not real. What is real is what is ever existing and ever shining. That is our own being, I am. So we are not investigating anything that appears or disappears. We're investigating that which is eternal. So whatever may appear or disappear, whether it's an inspiration, whether it's a beautiful form of God, divine music, whatever it be, let anything appear or disappear. It's no concern of ours. To whom does it all appear? Someone once asked Bhagavan, that is someone who obviously didn't understand what Bhagavan actually is, taking him to be an ordinary sadhu. Someone asked Bhagavan, Bhagavan, what would you ask for if God appeared before you? Bhagavan said, I would ask him not to appear, because I don't want a God who appears or disappears. But the God who appears or disappears is not the real God. Anything that appears and disappears is unreal. God is what is real. So he is what is ever existing and shining. What is ever existing and shining is only I am. So we shouldn't be concerned. Yes, when we try to turn our mind within, all sorts of things will appear. Whatever appears is unreal. Let's not be concerned about it. What is the one thing that never appears or disappears? We're coming back to this verse 7 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. That which shines without appearing or disappearing as the ground, as the foundation for everything that appears and disappears, that alone is what is real. That alone is the real substance. So we should not be concerned about anything that appears and disappears. That's why if anything appears or disappears, Bhagavan has given us a brahmastra, that is a divine weapon. To whom does it appear? That is to turn our attention back to ourselves. So let even the greatest inspiration in the world appear. To whom does it appear?
Yes, you just gave me the how too, because the question was being there. So how do I move my attention away from the inspiration? And again, the question is the how. So it sounds like the mind is getting enamored with the writing on the paper, so to speak,
Yeah.
which is the inspiration, and the guidance there is just to look at the paper and you know, put the attention.
And you are
on
the paper.
And yes, okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. Very
Right,
helpful.
right.
I get caught in that so
We all
much.
get caught. This is the nature of the mind. Mind is Maya.
Yes, yes. So Kumar just asked
But
me.
that is why Bhagavan is always emphasizing we should hold on to what alone is real. And what is real is what is ever existing and ever shining. And that is only our own being. I am.
Thank you. So you want me to read it?
Yeah, in relation to that, you could read that question.
Ram says, when I feel peace, that is also unreal, right? Since something is experiencing it or watching it.
Any peace that appears and disappears is unreal. What we actually are is the peace that never appears or disappears. The ever shining peace, which is our own being. But we overlook this peace, which is our own being, because we keep on looking for something new.
Right. Thank you, Michael. Bruce, you want to go ahead and go next? Do you have a question?
Well, it was earlier, right? In relation to Robert Boyer. Yeah, let me go back.
You ordered peace?
Let's see, where the heck is it now? I don't want to slow us down.
Okay, let me go to
Here it is.
Sarah Inayat.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead and finish it. Go ahead. Bruce, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm posing this in relation to the your response to Robert Boyer and his question. And because I feel like Robert Boyer, the question you were answering specifically his question, but I felt like there was a question behind his question. And the question, the way I'm trying to phrase it is, can the action of a nishkarmiya karma take the form of a philosophical question like Robert's? and thus lead him to Atma Vichara, an authentic Atma Vichara. So that's my question. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes. That is, philosophy can point us in all sorts of directions. This world is full of, from time immemorial, in cultures throughout the world, there have been so many different philosophies, and they've been pointing in so many different directions. But Bhagavan has given us a philosophy that is consistently and persistently pointing our attention back at ourselves. So Bhagavan's philosophy, for those of us who want to know what we actually are, and thereby to subside and just be as we are, Bhagavan's philosophy is the supremely valuable philosophy. So philosophy per se, it's just like a knife, and the same knife, but in the hand of a murderer, can kill someone. In the hand of a surgeon, it can save someone's life. So the philosophy is just an instrument like a knife. It can cut in so many different directions. So it depends how we apply that philosophy. So Bhagavan has given us a philosophy, but is pointing us in the right direction. So the philosophy is not an end in itself. It is a means. It is pointing us in what we should investigate. We should investigate only what is eternal, namely ourselves. Does that adequately answer your question?
Yeah, I think I hope it is helpful for Robert as well.
Yeah,
that was my intention. So,
thank you. So this is a questionnaire. This is from a questionnaire who wishes to be anonymous. How to use Arunachala Stuti Panchagam as a guide or support or companion in our life? I've been trying to learn the songs by heart over the past year, and I find that, for example, if I'm depressed or agitated, singing Akshara can be helpful. So is there an intrinsic power in these verses?
Yes. Because these words came from Bhagavan, even if we don't understand the meaning of the words, they have their own power. But if we understand the meaning and we meditate on the meaning of these verses, they are even more powerful. I mean, they have such great power, because this is what Bhagavan is basically. Bhagavan is in Aksharam Life, for example, or it applies to all the songs of Stuti Panchakam, but particularly Aksharam Life. Bhagavan is telling our life story, or what our life story should be. Our life story is not the external story, what's happened in our life, where we were born, where we went to school, what happened in our life, who we married, how many children we had, what job we had. This is not the real story. The real story of our life, our inward journey, our journey back to our source. And that is the story Bhagavan is telling in Aksharam Lai. So if we meditate upon the meaning of the verses of Aksharam Lai, that has so much power to push us back within more and more and more. Because that's what it's all about.
oh,
Exactly. Bruce.
muting. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. Okay. Second question from the same person. I'm finding great difficulty in even beginning to give up attachment to this body as I. Other vasanas, like the vasana to eat tasty food, etc., is relatively easier to give up. But this dehabhimana seems almost impossible to give up and prevents the mind from turning within. Is dehabhimana, the I am the body sense, also a vasana?
Dehabhimana is ego. Abhimana means, there's no exact English equivalent of abhimana, but abhimanam implies both attachment and identification. So we identify this body as I, and we are consequently attached to it. So that identification and that attachment, that is the abhimanam. So dehabhimana is another name for ego. So ego is the root of all vasanas. Vasanas themselves are not easy to give up, because we have cultivated these vasanas from, as Bhagavan says, Tondru Totu Varakindra Vishaya Vasana. These vasanas come from time immemorial. So maybe the vasanas may be changing. We may be replacing one vasana with another vasana. That is, the vasanas are like the ocean waves. So they ebb and flow. They rise and subside. But extricating ourselves from these vasanas is not a simple task. Because why are we? Bhagavan often talks about the mind acting under the sway of its vasanas. Why are we swayed by our vasanas? Because our vasanas are our likes and dislikes in seed form. So why do we allow ourselves to be swayed by our vasanas? Because we like to be swayed by them. Because the vasanas are likings, basically, likings and dislikings. So it requires great love, great bhakti, which can come only from grace. But though Bhagavan is giving us that love to turn within, we have to yield ourselves to his grace. We have to allow ourselves to be swayed by his grace to turn within more and more. So in order to overcome these Vishaya vasanas, the most effective means, most thorough means, is to patient and persistent practice of self-investigation. Because the nature of vasanas have no strength of their own. Whatever strength vasanas have is strength that we give them. So they derive their strength from us. When we allow ourselves to be swayed by any vasana, we are thereby strengthening that vasana. When we refrain from being swayed by that vasana, we are weakening that vasana. So all Vishaya vasanas are taking our mind in one direction, well, in multiple directions, but all those multiple directions are outwards. So in that sense, they're all taking us in one direction, outwards. By turning our attention within and clinging to self-attentiveness, we are not allowing our mind to go out. So we're not allowing any Vishaya, so long as we're holding on firmly to self-attentiveness, we're not allowing any vasana to sway us, any Vishaya vasana to sway us. So the more we cling to self-attentiveness, the more we are weakening Vishaya vasanas collectively. Not one by one. Though Bhagavan talks about cutting down the enemies as they come from the fort one by one, that's just for the analogy. But in practice, we by clinging to self-attentiveness, we are weakening Vishaya vasanas collectively. So this is to overcome Vishaya vasanas I don't want to say it's not easy. It's not something that we can just, brush away. Okay, I get rid of all my vasanas. Some people tell me, I've now got rid of this vasana, I've got rid of that vasana. When they're talking about their particular desires they may have freed themselves from. But the desires of the vasanas in the sprouted form, the vasanas of a seed. So even if we think we've overcome a certain desire, that vasana may still be there in our heart and may later spring up again, sprout again. So this is a superhuman task, overcoming all our vasanas. But it is possible by clinging to self-attentiveness. So when you say you're not able to give up the dehabhimana, you're not able to give up the dehabhimana because you're not able to give up your vasanas. So the same medicine that frees us from the Vishaya vasanas will also ultimately free us from the root of the Vishaya vasanas, namely the dehabhimana. And that medicine is this simple practice of self-investigation. So the more we cling to self-investigation, the more we weaken the Vishaya vasanas. And to the extent to which we weaken the Vishaya vasanas, we are also weakening the root of the Vishaya vasanas, namely ego. So do not, it seems to us to be a superhuman task. It seems to us we're not at all able to do this. But if we trust in Bhagavan's words and continue trying our best to cling to self-attentiveness, slowly, slowly, these vasanas will lose their strength. And this dehabhimana will begin to wither, and eventually it will die completely, along with all its vasanas.
So these two questions have the answer in itself, self-surrender and self-investigation.
Can I add one?
Yes.
Could I add one sentence? There are many reports of out-of-body experiences, such as near death and drug use. I can't say that I recommend any of them.
Yes, but even when you say out of the body, when people describe out-of-body experiences, for example, a near-death experience, or as you say, maybe from some drug, they have what they call an out-of-body experience. But supposing I experience myself out of this body, I'm floating up somewhere and I'm looking down on my body, as people sometimes do when they recover from near-death experiences, they still are located somewhere. The surgeons were operating on me, and I was up there and I could look down and I could see what they were doing. There are reports like that. So they still have a subtle body, they still have a physical body in a subtle form, because it has a physical location. If you say I was up looking down, you've got a location, you were somewhere up there. So it's though we may be viewing our body from outside in such experiences, we still have a body through which we are seeing this body. So it's not really an out-of-body experience, but we all have a true out-of-body experience every day when we fall asleep. Because in sleep, we experience ourselves just as I am, without any body. So that is the true out-of-body experience. And we have to experience that here and now by clinging to I am.
To quote A.E. Housman, ale man ails the drink for people whom it hurts to think.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Now let me go on to the next question from Peterson. How intense should we practice self-inquiry, meaning self-investigation, and is intensity more important than consistency?
Again, we use words like intensity, persistence, and everything, but these are not really things we can measure. When we talk of intensity of self-investigation, we mean the degree to which our attention is focused on ourselves and thereby withdrawn from other things. So we should try to practice this as intensely as possible. In other words, we should try to focus our attention as much as possible on our mere being, I am. And we should do so as persistently as possible. So, but we are not to measure these things. As much as possible, we need to attend to ourselves, as simple as that. We shouldn't get too much caught up in words like intensity and everything. All these words are just pointers. None of them really adequately capture what we are doing.
But
or
when
not
I
doing.
practice really
Go ahead, Peterson,
intensely, I get like a roadblock. Like I practice so intense that like I just can't go any further. And if I just keep on doing that, that's a very tiring and stressful process to do it like that.
If it's stressful, then it's not. We're not. There's something is going wrong there, because though we talk about it as doing self-inquiry, it's not actually a doing. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, the doing mind will subside. So it's a cessation of doing. And it's actually the ultimate relaxation. the reason it's stressful is that vibhasanas are constantly pulling us out. And if we're trying to fight against vibhasanas, then yes, we will get tired. So sometimes it's good just to relax, leave it be, and then again bring it back. But we have to, this practice is in a sense an art. We have to learn this art by practice. So obviously we shouldn't get to a point where we feel it's stressful, because then our attention is on the stress we are experiencing rather than on the one to whom the stress is appearing. So we have to go about this investigation in a very intelligent way. We shouldn't get ourselves into a state of stress, because a state of stress is a state of mind. We are trying to go beyond the mind by clinging to that which is ever free of stress, namely our own being. So if we find we are stressing ourselves, relax, and then again return to it with a fresh heart and mind.
Right.
But it's very difficult to put all these things in words, because what self-investigation actually is something beyond words. So whatever words are used are just pointers. So if we feel that we're experiencing stress or anything like that, we should understand we're not quite doing it right. So relax and try again. That's why Bhagavan called this investigation. An investigation, if an investigation is proceeding, as the investigation proceeds, you learn more and more, and you get better and better idea the direction the investigation should go in.
Thank you, Michael.
It's a very subtle, the practice of self-investigation is very simple, but at the same time very subtle. So we need to go about it in a very intelligent way. I hope that was a helpful answer.
Oh, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Peter. So let's go on to the next question from Sarah Inayat. So namaskaram all. Hello, Michael. I have a question about the I am the doer notion. Does it mean we need to desist from thinking I have to do this? Or does it mean avoidance of the thought I am the doer of these actions?
Doership is the very nature of ego, because as ego, we identify ourselves with the body and mind. So whatever actions are done by mind, I am thinking this, I am seeing this, I am hearing this, I am feeling this, I am remembering this. So we have doership there in the level of mind. Whatever actions are done by the speech, I am saying this, I am talking, I am speaking, there's doership. Whatever actions are done by the body, I am sitting, I am standing, I am walking, I am working, I am doing this. So doership is inevitable so long as we rise as ego. Doership is the very nature of ego. Merely trying to stop thinking I am doing this is not the solution. But that is, so long as we rise as ego, we are experiencing ourselves as the doer. So merely thinking I am not doing this is not a solution. The solution is to hold on to our being, I am. The more we hold on to our being, the more we thereby separate ourselves from the body, speech, and mind which are doing the actions. So by holding on to our being, we are dissolving the false identification, which is the cause for the doership. And regarding about I have to do this, I have to do that, that is what is called kartavya buddhi. That is, the sense of doership is called kartrutva buddhi. That means sense of doership. Kartavya buddhi means the sense of duty. I have to do this, I must do this, I must do that. Yes, we shouldn't give room as far as possible. Bhagavan, in the 13th paragraph of Nāṇa, Bhagavan says very beautifully and very, very, I mean, he says, since one Parameshwara Shakti means, Parameshwara means the Supreme Lord, Shakti being power, so the power of the Supreme Lord. And Ishvara also means the ruling power, so the supreme ruling power of God, we can say. Since that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, instead of we also yielding to it, why to be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? What Bhagavan refers to when he says, Ipadisaya bendum, apadisaya bendum, it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that. That is the kartavya buddhi. I have to do this, I have to do that. What he is saying here, when he said that Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, what he means by karyas is whatever needs or ought to be done or to happen. So whatever needs to happen is going to happen. And whatever we need to do will be made to do. Whatever we need to do means whatever we have to do in accordance with our prarabdha. As he said in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother, Avarabha prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirandu atavipan. In accordance with the prarabdha of each one, he who is for that, meaning God or Guru, being there, meaning in the heart of each one of us, will cause to dance. So whatever actions we need to do in accordance with our destiny, we will be made to do. Because in order for us to experience our destiny, certain actions are necessary on our part. Those actions will be made to do. So those are among the karyas that God is making happening, is driving. So everything that is happening to us, he is driving that. And everything that we need to do in order to experience what is happening to us, he will make us do. So those actions that he will make us do, we obviously can't avoid doing. But in addition to what we have to do in accordance with our prarabdha, we are doing so many other actions driven under the sway of our vasanas. Those are the actions we need to desist from. So one of the ways to desist from it is to yield ourselves to that power, to God is doing everything. Everything that is meant to happen is happening as it's meant to happen. If I'm to think any thought, let him make me think the thought. If I'm to say anything, let him make me say it. If I'm to do anything, let him make me do it. So we yield ourselves completely to him. By how do we do that? The answer is given in the first sentence of that paragraph. Being firmly established as oneself, not giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought, except self-attentiveness alone is giving oneself to God. So we need to cling to self-attentiveness so firmly, but we give no room for the rising of any other thought. That is giving ourselves to God. If we do that, then everything else he will make happen as it's meant to happen. So that is what surrender is all about. So this is how we give up both doership and both the kartrutva buddhi, the sense of doership, and the kartavya buddhi, the sense of duty or obligation. I have to do this. Both we give up by clinging to our own being, I am. And to illustrate what he says in this sentence, he gives the well-known analogy of the passenger traveling on the train. Though we know that the train is going bearing all the burdens, why should we who go traveling in it, instead of remaining happily, leaving our small luggage placed on the train, suffer bearing our luggage on our head? So our thinking, I have to do this, I have to do that, that is carrying our luggage on our head. We don't have to do anything. All we have to do is to hold on to self-attentiveness. He will take care of everything else. He is driving all karyas. So we have to yield ourselves to him by clinging to self-attentiveness. That is the path he has shown us.
Thank you, Michael. I do have a follow-up question, if that's allowed.
Yes, certainly.
Okay. So unfortunately, because we're still, at least I am, still living within the limitations of this body
We
and
all are.
this mind, there are moments in our life where we have to decide whether we are going to do something that we know we're being driven by our Vishaya vasanas to do, but we have to decide. And going by your answer, it would seem that it's going to happen whether we want it or not, if it needs to happen. But I mean, whether it needs to happen or it doesn't need to happen, but we're going to do it anyways, it's all being directed by Bhagwan.
Yes. Whatever we may decide, what is going to happen is going to happen. If we decide to do something, if it is meant to happen, it will happen. If it's not meant to happen, it's not going to happen. So we actually, it seems to us, but because we have this strong sense of doership, it seems to us, but we have to decide. Actually, we don't have to decide. Bhagavan says in the second sentence of the same paragraph I was just reading to you, he says, even though one places whatever amount of burden on God, that entire amount he will bear. So if you leave the burden of deciding what you should do or what you shouldn't do, leave that to him. He will bear it.
Right.
So he's asking us to surrender ourselves completely to him. The whole problem is, but we are not doing so. All our questions arise because we are not yet willing to let go of everything and surrender ourselves completely to him.
Right. I think the trouble for me, at least, is because I've been raised in this traditional idea of religion where certain actions would upset God, or certain things we do will sort of, points will be struck down from our total score of good behavior.
Yeah, I know.
That idea is very difficult to beat out of our minds, because we've grown up with that.
Yes.
So when, for example, this decision that I need to take, if driven by my Vishaya vasanas, I decide to go ahead and do it anyways, because then I will say I am leaving it up to Bhagwan and I'm going to do this and he's going to make me do the right thing. If I do that, there will still be that feeling of shame while I do it, thinking, what's Bhagwan going to think?
Yeah, regarding what you say about this idea, this religious upbringing, which many of us have had some sort of religious upbringing. What is the ultimate aim of all religions? It is surrender of ourselves to God. So if we are surrendering ourselves to God by clinging to self-attentiveness, that is the ultimate good action. So we need to have a firm conviction. But what God actually wants us to do is to surrender ourselves to him. All these do's and don'ts are necessary, why they're given, for those who are not yet willing to surrender themselves to God. But when we are trying our best to surrender ourselves to God, the do's and don'ts become irrelevant. Because the ultimate good is surrender. Because surrender is the state where we don't rise as ego to do anything, where we leave everything to him. We surrender our mind, speech, and body to him. And the means to do so is to cling to self-attentiveness. Granted, we may not be doing this sufficiently. In fact, none of us are doing this sufficiently. That's why we're still here. But this is what we should be aiming for. And so long as we're aiming for this, we don't have to worry about good actions and bad action. That is, automatically, if we are drawn to this path of surrender, we will naturally be inclined to do actions that are classified by religions as good and disinclined to do actions that are classified as bad. So we don't have to worry about these good and bad actions. The ultimate good, the greatest good, is surrender.
Thank you.
I don't
That
think
really helps.
I don't think any religion teaches that there's a higher goal than surrender. I don't know of any religion, and I would question the truth of that religion if it says that there's a higher goal than surrender.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that list of good deeds and bad deeds that were handed out when we're brought into a tradition, that kind of confuses the mind, because then it seems like we're the ones who need to decide what is good and what is bad and follow all of those rules.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. This is really
well, all
helped
thanks
me
to Bhagavan, because I'm just pointing out what Bhagavan has said.
And I've just been so confused about this thing that I need to do, and it's really affecting my practice on a daily basis.
Having come to Bhagavan, there's only one thing we need to do: surrender ourselves. And the most effective means to surrender ourselves, as he points out in the first sentence of that paragraph, is to cling firmly to self-attentiveness. Because when we cling to self-attentiveness, ego thereby subsides, and the subsidence of ego is giving ourselves to God.
Thank you, Michael. And as an end note, I'm really glad to see that you're on the mend. Sorry to hear that you're
everything is given by Bhagavan. The illness is given by Bhagavan. The health is given by Bhagavan. So whatever he gives is good.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Last question. I think it's Catalina wants a slight explanation. I know we will discuss things later, so we probably don't need to go into the depth regarding verse 19 of Upadesa Thanipakal. So I'm just going to read your translation there. What is experienced as Shanti or peace in inward look itself is what is experienced as Shakti, power, by outward look. So for those who investigate and know, they are one. So that's the verse. So I'm just going to read the question. The Shanti part is clear, but how do we experience Shakti when we look outwards? Can you please clarify this?
Sadhuam used to give a nice analogy to illustrate the meaning of this verse. Supposing you have a dam that is being a very strong dam is built to hold back the water. So long as the dam is doing its work, the water is in the reservoir is calm, peaceful. If there's a slight crack in the dam, the water in the dam starts oozing out, and the more it oozes out, the wider the crack becomes. So eventually the whole dam gets washed away, and all the water comes out. When the water breaks its way out of the dam in that way, that seems to be a tremendous display of power. That is, that water will sweep down the valley. It'll destroy houses, villages, towns, factories. So many things will be destroyed by that great power. But which is a greater power? That power that is released, or the power of the dam that is holding the water in place? The peaceful state of the reservoir is the highest power. It is only when the strength of the dam is weakened, but that power manifests itself. So all of this creation is just a display of not of power, but of weakness. The true power is the power of just being as we actually are. That is what Bhagavan is referring to here. But what he refers to as the power, but when looked outwards, that is the power, the supreme power, the power just to be as we actually are.
Thank you, Michael.
When we allow ego to rise, that is equivalent to the cracking of the dam. And when ego rises, everything rises. A big flood is there.
Yeah, that's
because
very
it's
good analogy,
because it
yes.
manifests in the form of rising of ego and the appearance of all this. It seems to be so much power, but the greatest power is the power of just being as we actually are. So power and peace are one and the same thing. The supreme power is the power of just peacefully being as we are. Does that adequately answer that question?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that was my question. Is it was a mistake to somebody else, but you explained it beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, right.
Thank you. Very good, Michael. Thank you. So with that, we will adjourn today's session, and I will see you next month for verse 12 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham.
Okay.
Thank you.
Om Namo
Namo Ramana.
Bhagavate Sri Ramana Center.